point enough. I think certain industries get it. And they've really done a good job of creating channels and marketing to make sure that women veterans see themselves in the industry. But that is one of the elements that I think that you all have a wonderful opportunity to really amplify, because women veterans search for this technology field. I mean, so we track the pattern uses on our ID tool, and it is both men and women who are really looking at jobs in this industry.
Well, you raise a broader question about women in our industry. We really have tried to make an effort. We are the parent organization of Women's Wireless Leadership Forum, the PCIA. They do a fantastic job. They've got over 800 members now and growing strong, but it still is not a very diverse industry, frankly, either in terms of women or minorities. And it's something we're trying to change. We're trying to diversify. One of our training programs at Historically Black University, Virginia State University, WWF is doing great work. And what more can we do to sort of bring women in the industry? I think women veterans is a good idea, but how will that help our industry, and how can we diversify more effectively?
Yeah, well, I think it's certainly on our mind at Black & Veatch. We have a variety of women leaders, both who participate in WWLF and who are in leadership positions in our company as well. I think, you know, as the workforce has changed over certainly my career, which is seemingly a long time, I think the tide is changing in terms of what people's perception is about how to provide career development opportunities for all genders and ethnic diversity as well. And I'm not sure there's anything we can do dramatically different other than just making sure that there's equal opportunity for everybody to interview for jobs, take the appropriate training, and be put in positions of additional challenging opportunities.
Yeah, you have to do that and then recognize the skills that they bring that are unique. I'm thinking right now of a two-person audit team. We always used to call it a two-man audit team. Yeah. It's a two-person audit team, and we've got multiple ones of them that are out there. And the thing that I enjoy so much about this particular team, their error rate is almost non-existent. They're on schedule, they're communicative, and their picture quality is better than any of my two-man teams. There are two women on that team. And I think that's where sometimes what we try to do is just say, yeah, I'm going to be open to hire women. Another thing we may want to do is look at the fact that, hey, there are some areas where women bring expertise that maybe the men don't. Rigging, it's a difficult thing to do. Taking them into a planning position, they're methodical in how they approach the problem. If they understand the scope of work and they understand the standards that apply, they'll ensure that they're able to plan for safety so everyone is satisfied.
I think also, Jonathan, we could highlight the successes of women in our field. And, you know, Gemma, she now works for, our first instructor was Molly Cooper. She was phenomenal, and she was the most technically competent instructor we could find when we started the program. And now she's at Aiken Tech. And our first climbing class we graduated, the top graduate was a female combat medic. And I think in reflecting on this conversation, we need to do more to highlight that and demonstrate how women are succeeding in the field.
Everything Scott described as the qualities of women in general, we hear that a lot, and Ms. Cooper is the lead instructor for our program. She is attentive to details, and she now has become the face of the program in Augusta, Georgia. But I hear the same thing in the manufacturing industry, the nuclear industry, and welding. We have just recently have a company that has asked us for a welder that has climbing experience. And again, the female welders, so if we could marry those technologies and marry them to the field, the network systems operators, if you look across the industry, every telecommunication industry needs someone to manage those network systems. Women are phenomenal in that field. And that, at Aiken Technical College, the network systems program has more women in it than the welder. We graduate maybe one welder a year that's a female, one manufacturing technician or maintenance tech. So in our welding and our tower program, we haven't had that many women. But with Molly being out there, her face has become known, but our second instructor happens to be a veteran. So we brought the two entities together, and I think together they're going to have the program is exceptional now. I think after the 2 years starting it out with Kelly, it has grown phenomenally. And a lot of that credit, attention to details, the videos, the online components, the assessments, the climbing that she takes them through, learning how to tie knots. I mean, they do 40 hours of outside climbing before they do the program. But it's her drive, safety, safety, safety first. And I think that's a real attribute to the program and to Molly Cooper.
Maybe we can talk a little bit more about what you're doing at Aiken. You know, the American educational system moves slowly and basically hasn't taken into account our industry. Our industry's grown rapidly, and there were no educational programs in the accredited colleges for our industry, even though we're one of the fastest growing in the country. You are really at the cutting edge. How do we bring that aircraft carrier that's the educational system around? I know it's going to be slow, but we want to move in the direction of basically serving the needs of our industry, making sure that there's more programs like yours. Maybe you can tell us about Aiken and how we can make the educational system serve our
Well, Aiken Technical College, as you know, is a comprehensive two-year community college. So in some states, they created a technical college and a community college. In South Carolina, there were only 16 of us, and we are comprehensive community technical colleges. Well, Kelly visited us in August of 2013, met me on a Friday afternoon, and I was all hands in. I'm very passionate about veterans. I'm also very passionate about building a high-quality workforce. So your industry was a new industry to me, but it was not a new model that I needed to create. We've done this for the nuclear industry, we've done it for manufacturing, we've created it for welding. What was unique with what Kelly asked me to do was to create a program that could assist veterans first and foremost. And then I immediately thought, well, how can we do this? Non-credit is fine. There's nothing wrong with non-credit training. But I also am passionate about veterans and passionate about students, but I'm also very, very passionate about the economy and to create an upward mobility of economic sustainability. Individuals need at least an associate's degree. In your field, you're tremendous. You can start them out at a very beginning position, but you want to retain them. You want that loyalty factor. So how do you do that? Is you do it through increasingly education. So with Kelly, we created a 16 credit hour certificate that the soldiers could use tuition assistance from the Army under the Career Skills Program, which allows them in their 6 months before ETSing or retiring, they can then, with command approval, take 16 credit hours. And so they attended our college for 5 full weeks, Monday through Friday, very similar to their AIT training that they do to learn a skill set. And in that timeline, they walked away from our program with their first aid, basic life support, RF, EM. They were authorized to climb, and they also had their rigging and I think I said OSHA 10 and first aid. So they had the credential to walk into any of your organizations or the subcontracts and say, I have solid training. I've climbed outside, I've climbed inside, I've gone through that. Well then, along with Virginia State University, Aiken Technical College submitted a Department of Labor TAP grant, which we were awarded. And so now we're evolving the program to stackable credentials. The idea is they come to work for you with our 16-hour credit certificate. While they're on the job, learning their competencies for your organization, they can be continuing their education online and just return for skill set assessments at certain periods of time. And then so on, the third certificate will be designed for them to take those specialties, whether it's small cells, whether it's DAS, or microwaves, whatever you may need. And then finally, they'll round out their degree with an ethics course, interpersonal skills training, fundamental mathematics. They need to grow with the industry, as well as valuing diversity and technical communications. But ideally, we also want the crossover fields, your network systems, your welders if you're a tower erector, as well as you're a maintenance company. That's what the college or the community college could do. We're related very much to the community. I'm one of 1,200 across the country, so I can help spread the word. I just can't be robotized to go around the country creating the programs for you. But, you know, with the Department of Labor grant, once that's created, that is open source educational material, so it'll be available out there for any college who would want to create it. So
That's a great point. You know, right now, basically most of the training is happening in-house. Our companies have had to train our own folks because the educational system wasn't helping at all. And so what you're doing is really helpful to all of us. And those who are involved in private training, they're uneven, they're different. Some are very good. How can the private training that companies are doing in-house or the private training companies are doing benefit from the curriculum development that you're doing?
Well, one of the things that we have done is we built into the grant for prior learning assessment. So let's say an organization has one of those grading climbers that they want to retain. They could actually take an assessment to say, okay, they basically can exempt from so many hours and then continue on. We also have ACE credit, which is the American Council of Education. If it's credit that has been evaluated, there's certain, like any military's AIT training, they can get exemption credit to go towards it. There are many ways community education colleges can work with industry. We do it every day because we're community-based. That's why we are called community colleges. And I like to say we don't have bureaucracy, but I don't think Kelly and you and some others would agree because some colleges are loaded with bureaucracy. I just happen to be sitting under the president as a vice president, and I've been there 22 years, have been in education and training since 1975. So I think I probably know how to work around the angles.
This all raises kind of a practical issue. I mean, there's wonderful training opportunities there that we're developing, but these companies that are the employers, Scott and Marty, how do you fit that in? You've got a workforce, and a lot of these companies have workforces that they would like to see them get more skills training, and yet very busy right now, which is a good thing for our industry. But how do you basically get the time and the resources? GI Bill is one way to do it, but how do you make sure that the workers can get that are on the workforce today the training they need, and how can we leverage some of this curriculum we're developing to benefit the existing workforce and apprenticeships as well?
Yeah, well, I think that was really interesting for me to learn. And what Jim was talking about is that it's really important for us to have training fairly localized. So taking advantage of community and technical colleges around the country is probably essential. The cost of putting crews on the road for extended period of time, and then the fact that typically leads to turnover because people don't want to be gone from home that long.
Exactly.
Is huge. So if the programs through the grants you're getting and the funding that you guys are developing would allow for that to be somewhat portable to multiple institutions around the country, I think that's huge because we talked briefly about it earlier, but the cost of turnover is tremendous.
Yeah.
And the leading cause of turnover for us is the constant travel and the fact that you're never home. And, a week or so, 2 weeks is fine, but when it becomes 6 weeks, 2 months, that kind of thing, we lose good people. And if we could do the training on a much more localized basis where they exit the military, they've been gone from home for a while, they want to move to their regular home. And so that's an encouraging area for us, I think, to invest in. And, the cost of training it's just part of the business, and you've got to bake it in because the cost of having untrained workforce is a lot higher. And so it's a necessary cost to our business.
It doesn't answer your question directly, but the neat benefit of what Jenna's doing is awareness. So because we've got these programs getting into the schools, it's going to get to the high school counselors, it's going to raise the awareness. How many people woke up one day in high school and said, I want to be a site acquisition specialist? They don't even understand our industry. Our industry had no presence for people to seek that as an opportunity. A lot of people had the opportunity to choose, I want to go into manufacturing, I want to go into automotive, I want to go into this or that. It was discussed as a career. Our industry really doesn't have a good career discussion, and I think one of the things that's so important about what Jenna's team is doing and what they're unveiling with this is we're going to have it become an awareness issue. And when it becomes an awareness issue, that's going to glean respect from all sides of society for what these men and women do. It's neat. A lot of you have heard me say it. When you see a girl texting at the mall, it's funny when she walks into the wall. At the end of the day, that's something that we all enjoy, the luxury it gives us. But when you dial 911, over 80% of the 911 calls are on our devices. When you dial that, it needs to work every time. Our society takes for granted what all of us do to make that happen. And so the awareness of what you're going to do is going to help people look at this as an industry and have a career.
The one challenge that I know the industry has, and something to think about, is how can you bring in someone that's right out of high school, bring them into a training or apprenticeship program, because we understand as an institution hiring someone under 21 is not your preference. But when I go out and present to high schools about career opportunities, and as I said, the telecommunication, the tower industry has gotten quite a bit of press in the Augusta or the central Savannah River area between Augusta and Aiken. But others around the country have called me. But high school students that don't know what they want to do, they are intrigued about learning how to climb towers. And then we have to say, well, they won't hire you if you're not 21. So I would encourage all of you as an industry to think as you're developing these programs, are there that career pathway that a senior in high school can look at? They can look at welding. So we can get them into our welding program and then train them to work for you as erectors, but at the same time, they don't want to go to school. They want to jump out and make some money, and $15 or $16 or $12 an hour is a lot of money to a high school graduate. So it's something to think about as an industry.
Well, it is, my kids are an example of it. Young people go a lot about wireless devices are kind of pretty much glued to theirs. They get it in a very intuitive way because that's how they communicate. They don't even go visit each other anymore. They just use our equipment. When we talk about the workforce that's already existing that we want to improve training for, the apprenticeship model is a great one. How can we use some of these resources that we're talking about, both in terms of veterans and in terms of academic training that's going on, to inform the apprenticeship program? We're working with Texas A&M. How can apprenticeships help? A lot of countries around the world are using them very effectively. We're not, but we want the wireless industry to be on the cutting edge of that.
Lose the fear. The big thing about the apprenticeship program is there are people that are using the term slippery slope, government involvement, government overreach. It's not. This is a joint venture. It's a bipartisan thing, and frankly, the industry has control of what we've set up with the Department of Labor. These people that are confused by the fact that this is going to lead to this or that or anything else, the board is an elected board. It gets turnover through the associations that get to vote for new members. We want to keep it to be an eclectic board. Ideally, you only serve one term as chair, and that's the way it sits right now. So I only have to be on it for 2 more years and I'm out. And the reason for that is we want that turnover. And that turnover at that board level is so critical to allow the industry to constantly have a fresh voice. But fear is the biggest issue here. Fear is what we're dealing with. We're afraid to come together as an industry and say, yes, we're going to establish one common terminology for what a position is. Because when that starts to happen, when there's a change in technology, when there's an evolution that we have, we'll understand a process for credentialing what that person needs to know and demonstrate a skill for. When we can establish what a person needs to know and what they have to demonstrate to show they have a skill, how hard is it to get the training developed? It's not, is it? How hard is it for you to go ahead and work with the military so that we can properly place people through Kelly's Warriors for Wireless into our industry? What your problem is right now is, I'm going to have a tower guy. What is that? What's the career path associated with that? How do we attract good men and women to this industry? Because it's getting more advanced. And as we develop and as we grow this industry, the need for these people to have a high technical acumen is going to increase. And if we don't find a way to lose the fear and get the commonality, we won't be able to meet the needs coming in a way that we could if we did.
I think you bring up an excellent point, which is you have a platform where you've got transitioning service members globally. We train each and every one of them on technical training tracks, and your industry is not represented, right? We need to have you at the table when we're talking to these men and women who are transitioning from active duty service, the majority of which are under age 25. I mean, it seems to me that there's a lot of synergies here. These are individuals who have been vetted. These are individuals who have a proven track record. You have a funded GI Bill. We spend $13 billion a year on the GI Bill, and less than 40% of veterans actually use it. And the majority who use it for 4 and 2 year type of programs. Again, there is a lot of white space for your industry to come in and create a value proposition to veterans who, quite frankly, want to come into this type of industry. So I think this is where Kelly has been very disruptive in a positive way in this space by creating a model that actually fits the bill. So if we're training in Abu Dhabi, or we're training in Germany, or we're training in Fort Hood, Texas, we're able to have a common taxonomy about this opportunity.
One thing, and we're just announcing it, I guess now, but we're five bases have offered to participate, where we as the industry, with Wards Wireless are going to come in for 1 week. The commanders are going to get them, the garrison commanders give them the week off. They come into free training, and it's a pre-certification wireless training. They get their OSHA 10 training, their CPR, their first aid, their RFEME, RF awareness, and then they get a wireless 101. And we sit with these transitioning soldiers for a week for free, get them pre-certified, and then when they come into our programs, it's a whole week, they've already got their certifications, and it's probably the best vetting process. So we offered it up to Joint Base Lewis McChord, and we probably had, for the first class we're talking about, probably have 7 times the number of seats that we have available to do this training. So that demonstrates there's a huge need, a huge desire. It also shows how we're working with the military proactively, because there's no cost to the soldier, and it's a great opportunity for them to learn about the industry, and also if they get to the end and say, climbing a tower 200 feet, not my cup of tea, they can still take those certifications, go into construction, go small cell, go DAS, other things that they can go do. So that's an example of what Rosie's talking about in a very pragmatic way.
And that's where the uniformity is going to be so important, because that's going to help small employers, medium employers, large employers, the industry as a whole in our society. But to get to where they can really maximize the return, we need to have the right advice and the right direction being given to Kelly, so that he can take and continue to work with people like Gemma and Rosie to develop things that are consistent, and they can get that conveyed so that it can be done anywhere that needs to be done. Now an employer knows that at least this person, before I let them in my door, has been up a tower. At least this person, if they're coming in for a site acquisition position, has the overview on wireless 101. At least this person has this. You're starting with something that the person has, versus I'm taking the full chance on this hire.
But I think that's a natural evolution as the industry matures. When you think about it, with our engineers, they get a engineer in training certification shortly after they graduate. There's some standardized testing, and later they progress to a professional engineer. We have a lot of IT people who go through Cisco certifications and TIA, and I think it's just a natural evolution as the industry matures, that you move towards this kind of structuring of career paths and structuring of qualifications, and that's where education and industry have to interact and provide the guidelines from industry and the training from education. And I think it's coming. And we may think this industry's been around for a while, but it's really not that advanced in comparison to maybe certain other industries that you interface with a lot.
And the beauty of it is you're not reinventing the wheel. There have been many other educational fields, nursing for one. Every nurse across the country is trained to the same standard, takes the same national examination. So pay attention and learn from those. The nuclear industry is the same way. It doesn't matter where you go in the country. If you're going into a commercial or DOE facility, they know what your training has been in your modulars. And apprenticeship, sometimes people take it back to, especially coming from South Carolina, right to work state, a lot of people equate that to union, and as Scott said, don't be afraid of it, because it's really not. It's a very structured